Hi there, I'm your host Marlene McConnell and welcome to the Surviving Trauma Stories of Hope podcast. In this week's episode, I am thrilled to welcome James Arthur Ray and Bersabeh Ray to the podcast. James is a New York best-selling author, philosopher, and consultant who has worked with over 1 million people in 146 countries through his coaching and leadership programs. He is the author of 6 books, including the New York bestseller Harmonic Wealth, and has appeared on numerous television shows, including Oprah, Larry King, and The Today Show. In 2009, he lost everything after a tragic accident and became homeless with $20 million in debt. He has since rebuilt his life using the same strategies he teaches his clients. His story is told in the CNN documentary Enlighten Us. Ray is on a mission to positively impact on a minimum 1 billion lives and businesses worldwide. Bersabeh, his wife, was born in Iran, and she faced many challenges growing up, such as not speaking English, falling into gang behavior, and drug culture. Bersabeh was in an abusive relationship for years before finding the self-confidence and courage to leave. In 2013, she met James Arthur Ray, and she helped him rebuild his life after he lost everything. As an intuitive consultant, Bersabeh helps people heal from their past and take their power back. It has been my absolute pleasure to have James and Bersabeh join me on the show. Thank you so much to my listeners for joining me on this journey. Comment on the posts on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn and let me know what you think of this episode. Also head to Amazon.com or takealot.com and get your copy of my book, Ray of Light. And please leave me a rating. It would mean the world to me. Also check out my website, download your free journal prompt and relaxing meditation. As always, stay tuned and keep listening. Welcome, James and Bear. Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to the Surviving Trauma Stories of Hope podcast. It's such an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for being here with me today. How are you?
We're doing well. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us. We're excited to be here.
This is awesome. I love the work that you do. And as a fellow teacher of self-development, I am always amazed at how we can transform our lives and how we can look at life. And if we change our perspective in life, life can improve for us. But, for most people, that's not always the case. So I sort of want to start with you, James, and talk to you. I mean, you have had such an incredible, stellar career. You've been a New York Times bestselling author. You have worked within the philosophy world. You've been a consultant. You've built an empire and you've helped so many people. That must have been an incredible, incredible experience for you to be recognized on the global platform for the work that you do. What was that like?
Well, it was as it says in the Old Testament, it was both a blessing and a curse. And I think this is a really important message for people in today's world, because it seems like in today's world, we're so obsessed in many circles with becoming a public figure or to becoming an icon or to be a leader or all those kinds of things. And there's a dark side to that as well. I'm certainly grateful for all of that. I've worked with over 1 million people from 146 countries around the world, and that's been a blessing. And it was a blessing to be on Oprah and Larry King and the Today Show and all of those things, having a New York Times bestseller. And yet there's a dark side of that too, which is if you're not careful, then hubris kicks in and you start to believe that you kind of have it all figured out. And the minute that you think you're the bomb, so to speak, the universe tends to bomb you because as we've heard so many times, pride comes before a fall. And yet the fall also brings great lessons. That's kind of your theme here as well, about what we would call transmutation and taking the fall and turn it into something grand and beautiful as well. So it's kind of it's a blessing and a curse. It's both and, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, no, for sure. And I think that, something that you mentioned about it being this blessing and a curse is that you can reach the pinnacle of what you think your dreams and desires are, but it teaches us, your story teaches us that it can also change in the blink of an eye, that everything in life is temporary.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's all temporal, and we don't like to embrace that. You're so accurate, and yet when we embrace it, then we see things clearly. Every single thing that you think you own is going to belong to someone else someday.
Yeah.
That's just a fact.
Mm.
And if we're not careful, I had it all. I was making $4 million a year, and I had the 7,500 square foot estate on Mulholland Drive in Beverly Hills, and I had all the fame and all of those things, and yet it was gone, like you said, in a blink of an eye, gone. And the harsh reality is, even if you don't get hit hard by life like I did, it's all going to be gone anyway. And so it's not that we shouldn't pursue those things per se. It's just that we need to keep it in check. And is it possible to become super successful in worldly measure without getting out of control? Yes, I believe it's possible. And you have to stand constant guard at the gate, because it's very, very seductive
Yes.
to get sucked into materialism and secularism. And I think that's one of the big problems in today's world, quite
Yeah.
frankly.
And I also think like there's almost this lack of appreciation for where we are and what we have, because we're always chasing the next thing. What do you think, Bear?
I couldn't agree more with that, especially with the younger generation these days. They're chasing the fame, they're chasing the dollar, chasing followers and how many, likes they can get on posts and so forth.
Exactly.
And it's unfortunate that they do that, because long term on these empty chases leads to depression, leads to anxiety, leads to a lack of meaning, living a meaningful life. It's a means to an empty chase.
Mm-hmm. James, if I could come back to you. So in your story, when everything changed for you in a blink of an eye, I mean, I know that, you're in 2009, you lost everything through a tragic event. And I mean, you became homeless. You were in debt for, I mean, 20 million US dollars. I can't imagine being in debt for 20 million dollars. I think just being broke and having nothing is better than being in debt for $20 million, I must tell you. When we go through extreme circumstances like that, it's so difficult to keep the faith, to keep on going, to keep moving forward. How did you do that? What was it that you were drawing on that helped you to propel yourself forward to be able to get through those challenging times and rebuild your life?
Well, there's a lot of things, several things. The primal thing that I was drawing on was God, was my center, and there's
Yeah.
nothing better, really, to bring us back to the heart than a big hard hit in a crisis. It brought me back. I'll speak for myself, but I think this is overarching. It brings you back to center, and you say, okay, wait a second. What have I been living my life for? Who am I? What do I want to do going forward? I consider this part of my life James Arthur Ray 3.0, which tells you I've had two more reboots at least before this
Yeah.
one. So
Yeah.
that's the primal thing I was leaning on, was God, that my relationship with my creator, however you define that,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
also my own self-awareness of hey, what's really important, because the only thing in life that has true and lasting value is those things which can never be lost or taken. What you have inside can be given away, but it can never be taken. And that's why it's so important. And then secondarily, it was really important. Bersabeh and I have been together for a little over 10 years,
Mhm.
and we haven't always been a couple. We first met, I was homeless, 54 years of age, alone, and $20 million in debt. And you're right, broke looked good to me. I would have loved to have been broke because broke was
Yeah.
was $20 million over my head. And so Bersabeh met me then. Now, frankly, I was not a real attractive prospect at that point in time from a worldly point of view, but
Yeah.
Bersabeh believed in me even before I believed in
Yeah.
myself. And she believed in the message, and she wanted to help me. And so the second thing that really helped me was her. I mean, having someone in your life who believes in you and can support you and stands there with you. And that's really very vitally important in our
Mhm.
experience.
Yeah. I think you touched on so many important points that's crucial. When there you have absolutely nothing to lose and there is nothing more, you have to ask yourself that question. What is it that I bring to the world? And if I have nothing, what do I offer? Can I look to my talents and my innate abilities? Can I look to the things that I can do every day and it doesn't even feel like work? And I think, very often we're so distracted with everything that goes on in the world and in our lives that we don't really take the time to ask that critical question, which is so important for us really living our true full potential. But I wanted to come back and talk to you, Bear, because James brought up an interesting aspect and just the relationship that you have. So I wanted to talk
Mhm.
just a bit about your story. You were born in Iran and you moved to the United States, and you have faced many challenges yourself in the time that you have spent in three different countries: Iran, and then Pakistan, and then in the United States. But in particular, I wanted to focus on the abusive relationship that you were in. And I know that there are listeners out there that are in challenging situations, relationships that are abusive, that are constantly walking on eggshells, that have really low self-worth in those circumstances, that really can't see a way out. But you found your self-confidence, you found courage, and you took action to actually leave a devastating situation and an abusive relationship. Do you want to expand a bit more to just help our listeners understand and give them some guidance on how they can take that action in their lives?
Sure. What I could, I'll start off with. Let's see. Where do you go? Because you don't just get up one day and fall into an abusive relationship. What happens is we carry these incidences that happen to us in our earlier age, usually between birth to the age of 14. And because of these devastating traumas, whatever they may be, we start making choices that are not the best for us, and some of them could be abusive relationships. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I found myself. Now, coming out of that, yeah, it took a lot of internal diagnosis, you can say, to look in and say, okay, why am I making these choices? Why do I keep repeating these bad choices of being in a relationship that's, physically and verbally abusive? Why am I used to this kind of abuse? And if you can take a look at your life and be really honest with yourself and take an assessment of what has happened to you, and are you willing to face those challenges? Because a lot of times we just, we suppress them and we don't want to deal with them because it's quite frankly, it's too painful to deal with. So
Yeah.
once we can do that, then things start happening inside of you, where you start finding your center and you clean up those unresolved emotional issues, baggages that you've been putting off for years, not wanting to deal with. And once you do that and you heal those and you integrate them within you, then you can move forward. And that's when I came out of the abusive relationship. Was I had said, this is enough. I am not this person. I will no longer continue being a byproduct of other people's behavior and the way that I was raised by, the outside world. And it's scary when you do that, when you walk away. I'm not going to say it wasn't. It was very scary. It's almost like you're giving up your entire life. Everything is falling apart and you're afraid because you don't know what's on the other side, and you have to start all over. That's never fun, no matter how old you are. And you just have to take a jump, and you jump off. And then in that moment, I believe that you truly find yourself, and you'll be surprised and amazed what you're capable of once you take that step.
Yes. Taking back your power and choosing yourself in those circumstances, which most people will look at as a selfish act, but it's actually not. It is. It is definitely not.
No.
It's one of the most selfless acts that you could do. It's an act of kindness that you give yourself by choosing yourself in your life. I'm so glad that you found your
Yes.
power, and you found your voice and the courage to leave that situation, which led you to this beautiful relationship that you are in now. I read somewhere that
Yes.
you said that you met James in 2013 and you helped him to rebuild his life after he lost everything. And it's not everyone that just will do that. And so I think there's like such a beautiful connection between the two of you. And so do you want to expand on that, on the love story?
On the love story.
Can I just, I'd love to hear her love story. I really would. Can I just say something, though, that I think is really important for the listener?
Yes.
Is that to build on what Bersabeh said, and I like to call her by her full name, but to build on what she said, her first step was, and she didn't say this straight up, but she did, was to take personal responsibility. She didn't blame
No.
the other person or the situation. She said, okay, why am I making these bad choices? That's responsibility. And I think that's what we need so desperately in today's world. Everyone is wanting to place blame. They're wanting everyone else to pay the price for their prize. They want the government to do it, or this person or that person to do it for them. And no one can pay the price except for us. So anyway, now tell the listener.
Oh, no, love story.
Yeah.
Where do I go? So the love story, well, yeah, where do I begin? This friendship. Oh, yes, this is very important. When we first met, this started out as, well, it was a working relationship first. Then we became really close friends. We invested a lot of time together, and we do everything together. I think we go to the gym together, dinners, and that's how it started, was a friendship.
Yeah, let me just say, at first 3 years she worked for me. Now we're married, and I work for her. And if you're married, you know how that works out. I work for her, but I'm totally good with that. Anyway, go ahead, sweetheart.
Yes.
Bersabeh's the boss.
Yeah, I'm the boss now.
She's the boss, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I think it's really important for your listeners is, when you start a new relationship, any kind of, romantic relationship, it is this is the first time either one of us has done this, where we've gotten to a relationship and it was friendship first.
True.
And now
that's so important.
Oh, it's so important.
Vital.
Because we have the funnest time together. We're each other's best friend, and that's how it should be. So because in the beginning you attract to each other, and of course there's a sexual attraction, this and that, and after a while, when you're married and you're working, these things kind of, it's not what it used to be, and you have to work at it.
Wait.
No, I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying it's not hot, and that's all it is.
Okay.
And every married person, they know that. But it takes work. And if we didn't have the friendship that we have, the clear communication that we have with each other, then the rest of the stuff wouldn't be as great either. And I think that's vitally important to have a healthy relationship, is to have a great friendship with each other first. And
Yeah.
that's what we have.
Yeah, and we always will have.
Yeah.
In fact,
Yeah.
we were very hesitant initially when there was an attraction more
Yeah.
than friendship. We were both very hesitant
Yeah.
at first and kind of resistant
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, well, I've got this great friend and she's a
Mhm.
great worker and we're working together and she's so creative and productive. Man, I'm going to blow it. I don't want to blow it, because if it goes sideways, I'll lose my best friend and
Yeah.
I'll lose, the person who's helped me to build from below nothing.
Mhm.
And so anyway, yeah, but we will always be best friends, and that's something that never ever goes away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a great foundation, friendship, and I love how you spend all your time together, work together, and how easy and natural it seems to be for you guys.
Well, we
It's
worked at
beautiful
it.
to see. It really,
Yeah.
truly is beautiful.
Thank
So
you.
Thank
now let's talk about your business, because you have worked together, and James, you've had to sort of rebuild your career with the help of Bersabeh, and sort of had to start basically from almost below scratch,
Absolutely.
right? To
Spot
come
on.
back. Yeah. Yeah. So for listeners who was in that position, who has lost everything and who is now going back and building their business, what did that look like for you? How do you start to do something like that?
Well, I think when I was in 2013, I was I was alone. I was standing in the middle of the desert, and I was in horrible physical condition,
Mhm.
and I was $20 million in debt. I hadn't met Bersabeh yet, and I was homeless. And I had to dig deep. I think, for those listeners, my heart goes out to you. There's a lot of people in today's world who have been hit hard in the last several years,
Yeah.
and it's more common than not in a lot of cases. Here's the thing. I can promise you, first of all, and then I'll talk about step by step. It's not about the hits you take. I've been knocked down more times than I can count. I really have. And it's not about how many times you get hit or get knocked down. It's about how many times you get back up. And what gets you back up for me was those dig deep questions. Who are you? What do you know? And let me just clarify, no, because you can read every book in the world and watch every YouTube video, and you don't know anything. You know about
Yeah.
a lot of things. The only way you know is through personal experience and application, and hopefully that distinction is clear. So I asked myself,
Mm-hmm.
what do I know? Who am I? Why am I here? And those are the kind of things that we do with our clients, is help come to clarity on who I am really, not what you do. So many
Yeah.
people, who are you? Well, I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm a wife, I'm a husband, I'm a this. No, that's what you do. That's not who you are. You're so much more than what you do. And so, who are you really? What do you know? And what do you want to do with the rest of your life? I had asked myself as I stood in the desert. And when I answered those questions, then I made a decision to commit to paying the price for my prize, and that's redemption.
Mhm.
My latest book is called The Business of Redemption, and the word redemption, we hear it a lot in religious circles, and we're totally in alignment and support of that. And if you look up redemption, the simple definition is to gain or regain something by paying the price. And so
Yeah.
how do I gain my redemption, and how do I regain what I've lost? Well, I have to be willing to pay the price, and the bigger the prize you're going after, the bigger the price you must pay, and that's the responsibility piece that I mentioned with Bersabeh too. Is
Mhm.
that I had to, there was a time when I was angry at God, I was angry at the government, I was angry at the system, I was angry at the legal situations. all that. And I had to finally come to the point of taking responsibility. And only when you take full responsibility for where you are, regardless of who you are today and where you are as a listener, only when you take absolute responsibility for everything, because you could have done some things differently or better. There was probably signs that maybe you overlooked. You made some choices that could have been better. All these kinds of things. When you take that responsibility, now and only now are you empowered to move in a new direction. And so it's been 10 years. It's been a long climb.
Yeah.
It didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
It's been 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's been day by day, step by step that we've
Yeah.
built it back.
Yeah. And I think just James, just for the listeners, I just want to mention that because I'm not sure the listeners know the story of how you had to redeem yourself and the price that you had to pay. Do you maybe just want to share a little bit more about that?
Well, the price first and foremost is responsibility. Is taking responsibility. The first chapter in the business of redemption is I am responsible. Now,
Right.
there's all kinds of legal implications and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, and I see this so much in the world. Everyone's blaming the so-called opponent or this or that or the system or whatever else.
Right.
And you have to take responsibility, and that's the first price. And then the second price is you have to have a strategy and a plan, and you have to put that into persistent and disciplined action. A lot of people can be disciplined short term. It's interesting because Bersabeh and I had a young guy come to work for us years ago, and he said, well, I'm going to give this 18 months.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't turn out big in 18 months, then I'm out. And I said, well, you're probably not the best fit for us, because you don't put those kind of limitations. If you're really committed, if you know who you are and what you're doing, then there's no plan B. To have a plan B is a plan to fail. I mean, Bersabeh and I are all in, and we don't have a plan B. We really don't. And
Yeah.
it's been a constant juggle and a dance and a this and a that. And there's been some real frightening times, and yet we're committed. And you have to have that commitment. You have to have that discipline, and you have to have that persistence to just keep going, because and this is the key, who you are and why you're here. And so few people possess that, unfortunately. They're jumping from this to that to this to that to this to that.
Yeah. They don't give it sufficient time. And again, it comes back to that impatience that we have. But I want to touch on, because we've been speaking about the past and where we are now and going forward. And Bersabeh, I know that as an intuitive consultant, you help people in the practice really to heal from their past and to take their power back. Do you want to expand on how that works within the practice and what you offer the clients?
Sure. How I do these, it is an intuitive healing and integration session. So what I do is I go in, say someone comes to me, and let's use having a relationship problems as an example. And they're either can't get into a good relationship, or they just keep choosing the wrong person. Well, I say, okay, I will take them into a meditative state, and I will have them access what it is. It's all associated to a feeling. So I'll have them access it, and I will take them back, and it's tied to a traumatic experience they've had, or an unresolved emotional issue that I'll take them back to. You could kind of call this a soul retrieval. When I take them back to that incident, and I will they will get an idea of what happened, what decisions they made, what didn't happen, what could have happened. Why am I still stuck back in that time period with the ideas and beliefs that I've carried with me throughout the years? So once I help them figure that out, and sometimes it could be something that they're totally unconscious of. And this is where the
Mm-hmm.
intuitiveness comes in, is where I help them see what actually happened. Then that's when the healing takes place. Then and when they integrate, I bring them back to now with that piece of themselves that they have left there. You bring it back
Yes.
now with a wholeness and integration within them, and it completely shifts their world. So, in an extreme example, I'll tell you, and unfortunately, a lot of people have experienced this, is sexual abuse. And what happens with someone who's experienced sexual abuse, you either go super into the dark of meaning too much sex, or just has to be extreme of something, or someone who just can't really
Yeah.
have sex anymore, and they suppress it because it reminds them of the incident. They just can't deal with it, and that is super
Yes.
hard. It's a very traumatic experience that changes your entire world perspective, and you live from a place thinking that I wish to God that this had never happened to me, because I can't experience a sexual experience without having that in the back of my mind. And it's always going to be there. So then, they could do things to make themselves not think about it. And we could go into details into that. So this is where it becomes super powerful, is I can take them into that experience, and I can shift it and help them change it and break that chain. It's so that they could completely set themselves free. And I will tell you that it is completely possible for someone to be able to um, start having a normal sexual experience, brand new, as if that did not happen to him. And it's totally possible. And it's the most liberating thing, one of the most liberating things that I've had my clients experience. And
That's
yes.
wonderful because I think, if we look at your example of sexual abuse, I think what survivors of sexual abuse seek the most is sexual
Mhm.
safety when it comes to the
Yes.
bedroom,
Yes.
right? Um, and it's wonderful that you can bring them to this place where they can experience sexual safety and sort of have sexual power
Yes.
in the
Yes.
bedroom. A level of
Yeah.
equality, I would
Yes.
say. You know, yes,
Absolutely.
that's amazing. So I know that through the work that you do, James, through the book that you've written, Business of Redemption, you also do, leadership mentor courses in and coaching and leadership programs within your business. Do you sort of expand that into the corporate world for the business world, or do you simply do this sort of on a one-on-one on a group basis within your organization?
It's actually both, and Bishop and I actually work very closely and very much together. We
Mhm.
we first of all, when it comes to leadership, most of us think business, and I'm going to shatter that misnomer because every single one of us is a leader. And you say, "Well, James, I don't have a title or a position. I don't make a whole lot of money." It doesn't matter. It's
Mhm.
irrelevant.
I,
Leadership,
I love that, James. I love it.
yeah, you lead your life, you lead your business, you
Mhm.
lead your relationship. You're a leader of your own life, every single one of us. And so
Yes.
we do both. I work from a leadership perspective with individuals to lead their life, their relationships, and their business. And we broad based look at all those areas. What we want to do is help people create a significant business in addition to meaningful relationships and a
Mhm.
fulfilling life, because so many of us tend to think that it's either or. And so many people have a great business but their relationships are horrible and their health is horrible and they're not living a fulfilling life. And then there's others who have great health and maybe a good relationship. We don't meet very many people with a good relationship, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And we do work in that area too. But we also work with businesses on culture and what we really specialize in. And Bersabeh described her approach, and she's wonderful, I might say, because she's done some work with me. I had a lot of healing and integration to do coming through my dark night, and she's worked a lot with me, and she's very, very good. And ultimately, it's what we do is alchemy, and I know that's a mystical, somewhat hard to comprehend term for a lot of people, but alchemy is very practical. It's literally the art and science of transmutation. And transmutation is what you talk about. It's taking something of low value and transmuting it into something of high value, taking something that's a challenge and transmuting it into an opportunity. And so when we go into a business, yes, we can do leadership and sales and influence and team and all those things. And yet what we really love the most is looking at the cause versus the effect. Skills are the effect. And the cause is culture. Now, if that's a foreign term to you as a listener, let me make it really simple. Culture is nothing more than the collective beliefs, assumptions, values, perceptions, unresolved emotional issues, potential traumas, like Bersabeh talked about that she does in her healing work, of every single team member in a business. That collectively is the culture. These are things that are highly unconscious. And psychology tells us that 95% of what drives our behavior every single day is unconscious. 95%. And so, why do we do what we do? Most people, I don't know. Why do you keep doing that? Like Bersabeh said, I don't know. Well, I know because it's unconscious. And we have to make the unconscious conscious. And in an organization, we go in and we do a lot of diagnosis and a lot of assessments on talking to people one-on-one and focus groups and observing behavior and collecting notes and putting it all together. And then we go to leadership and say, hey, this is why you're getting what you're getting. And if you want to get different results, you have to create a different cause, because when you shift the cause, then you get a different outcome. So forgive my long answer to your question, but it's comprehensive. We because principles are cross contextual. So what applies to an individual applies to a business as well.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, I love the detail, because I mean, I'm enjoying this conversation so much, because as much as we are doing it, what, Bersabeh is talking about on an individual level, working within the conscious and the subconscious mind, because that's where we really can make that shift in belief and in perspective. If we do that on a bigger scale within an organization, you're right, James. I mean, we can change the culture. And if we can do that within organizations and within our private clients, soon, I mean, we might have a better world, because I think the world needs all of this at the moment, because wherever we look on social media, if we're scrolling or on the news, it's not a very pretty sight. And so, people need the healing, is what I'm saying. And it's an issue of humanity, if I can put it that way.
No, it's so true. And a couple of things to the points you've made. First of all, if we can agree that leadership is comprehensive, regardless of title or position, if we look just at business leadership for a moment, what many business leaders neglect to realize is that businesses don't perform, people do.
Yeah.
And so, come in and we have all this whole field of study called organizational behavior. And I, in my formal studies, I studied that, and I was in applied behavioral sciences in my formal education. And yet organizational behavior is kind of a misnomer, because organizations don't behave, people do. And so when you change the person, then you change the organization, because the people have changed. And then in addition to what you're talking about what needs to happen in our world, the world is hurting.
Yeah.
And let's face it, there's a lot of opportunity for alchemy and transmutation in the world right now, because there's a lot of things that appear on the surface to be trash. And yet, here's what I can promise. And it's easier to understand than to apply in most cases, even when you teach these things.
Yeah.
But every significant breakthrough is preceded by a breakdown. That's scientific. It can't be otherwise. And so what we're in right now is the breakdown. The breakdown is hard. It's scary. It's difficult. It's tough. And yet, if we can keep ourselves focused and see things clearly, then we realize we're not dying. We're moving to a new system, a new birth, potentially. Now, it's up to us to make it happen. It's not going to happen on its own. But if those of us who are more conscious and more aware can understand that, then we say, okay, we have knelt down to the god of money and materialism for far too long, and secularism, and we've gotten away from God, and we need to get back to center. And that's what the trauma that Bersabeh has experienced, and myself as well, is a good teacher of. And we're collectively going through that right now.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you're right. Trauma is a good teacher. And, it's probably designed to bring us closer to our higher power. Let me see. Was there anything that you wanted me to cover before we wrap up?
So do you want to talk about the gift that we have for the
Sure.
listeners? Yeah.
Yes, we wanted to gift your listeners a free copy of James's New York Times bestselling book, Harmonic Wealth. We also throw in the audio version and the movie.
Yes.
Full feature film.
Yeah, so you go to harmonicsuccess.com/book, and it's all yours.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is so generous of both of you. Thank you so much. I am truly, truly grateful and appreciative. And I'm sure my listeners are going to download this as soon as possible. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
It's our pleasure. We look forward to supporting your listeners and supporting you, because you're doing great work.
Yes.
And we really appreciate that. The world needs you to keep doing great work.
Yes.
Thank you again so much for joining me. It's been such an interesting conversation.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, God bless. Lots of love.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. That wraps up this podcast episode. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy my podcast, please take a minute to give me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe in your favorite podcast directory so you don't miss an episode. Please consider following My Centered Life on Facebook and Instagram for daily inspiration. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. You can catch me again in the next episode. Same time, same place. Sending you lots of love and light. Bye.